Hiya, this is Noddy from Make Way for Noddy, coming to do something completely different as usual because I can't have a channel with just one thing because I don't do just one thing, I do lots of different things at any different time. So this time I'm coming with a painting that I've done recently, and I've been asked to put a little video on how I made it, and I've done it despite not being completely comfortable with it, being the first time using these techniques and being the first time doing a portrait in such a long time. But I still hope you liked it. It's a very quick, short video, mostly because Procreate doesn't really allow to do more than that amount of time of video anyway, and that's how I saved the video. I do mention my techniques a little bit, and I do talk throughout the whole video, so if you like it, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you want to know more about my art, my travels, and my fitness content with bar, and possibly anything else I can start doing, like crafting. And also don't forget to visit my Instagram at Noddy Dark. Actually now at Dark Noddy. I'll just put the link or the name below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye! So like with all drawings, we started with a sketch. I knew more or less what I was going for, but I didn't have any references. I had my references, but unfortunately I left them in a place I couldn't access offline, and at that time I couldn't have any internet, so I started without any references at all. So this is just a rough sketch that I did, and then I started filling up the rough sketch with a bit more details. I ended up not wanting that much body, so I just erased it a little bit. And finished her basically on her bottom hand. Again, trying to get some ideas on how to make braids. It's been a very long time since I painted portraits at this time, so it's a process for me as well, and it is what it is. Very, very terrible with fingers still, so still learning. I wanted her to have some jewelry, and I wanted her to have a braid with a little scarf helping the braid up. So this is more or less by the end of the flight, and then I got access to my reference photos, and I decided to change her clothes again. So I basically erased what I needed, and I remade a little bit of her hand. Obviously the clothes and the hair, but I left the face pretty much as it was, which in the end I kind of regret how I left the eyes, but it's not too bad either. So lots of little sketches there. I was just trying to find the right pen to make the line art for the portrait. I ended up making her eyes a little bit thicker in the end, but that's how I started it originally. I also didn't I didn't divide the layers for each part of the line art, and next time, on my next painting, I'll definitely make a layer for each part of the line art. So hair in one layer, face and skin in another layer, clothes in a different layer. I do that with the colors, but I didn't do it with the line art, and it just made the process a lot worse when I was trying to color the line art with a different color than just the black. So that's something to remember for the future. So still making the clothes, I decided that she looked a bit too thin and skinny. I don't know how that happened really, but I increased the shoulder on the, my right side, her left side. Some details on that. It's not really a scarf, but for me it's the central piece on her clothing. So I got those color schemes from a website, which I will leave the link below. It's just very, very handy to find colors that you like and that go well together. And I started doing the flat colors. So again, like I said before, I leave each color in a different layer, and I might change this process later on. I think I prefer coloring in a grayscale rather than doing straight on the colors. I think it just helps me to get the depth that I need for the shadows, and then I can choose the colors afterward. But this was a different experience, and it was still valid enough. Again, this is the color scheme that I chose, so this was just a way of me picking the colors that I wanted to use from those that I picked up before, and in all honesty, I was quite happy with the results afterwards. And this is more or less the time I start shadowing. So I started with a slightly darker color than the skin color to do the shadows where I thought they'd be. Again, as you can see, I changed my ideas several times, so this time I put a little bit redder in particular places. I do think I usually miss the red and violet on the skin tones. So again, going with a darker brownish color, which I then blend together. So it's just using the paint tool and then the smudge tool to smudge it all together. Nothing fancy. I do put each layer on top. So I put one shadow, then I create another layer, increase the shadowing, and etc. So here I try with dark violet, but I think I end up lowering the opacity to such a point that I end up not having any violet at all. So I will increase it again later on. These are meant to be the darkest shadows, but I do increase it all at the end, just because I never felt I achieved the degree of depth that I wanted on the character. So this was my take on the highlights initially. I do add a different layer on as an add, so it adds light. I do love the effect on it. Again, I just add the color and then I blend it together. I did the eyes next, so I keep the eyes and the mouth and the lips on a completely different layer, and I do the same with the eyebrows. It's weird because when I made the painting initially, when I did the sketch, I really liked her eyes, but in the end I thought they were too big. What you saw there very, very quickly, it was just me adding noise to the face and trying to create a little bit more of a skin texture. So I just doubled the skin layer, added some noise, and then I put it as an overlay, decreased the opacity a little bit. So after this I started painting the hair, which is something that I really, really like and I miss it. I started the same way that I did with skin, so adding one layer at a time and increasing the shadows. So I started with a very light shadow. And then I increase it. For this I use a very normal brush. I do have hair brushes which adds more little strands of hair, but I find that the normal brush is actually quite useful for a first layer of shadowing. I believe that for this one I use that air strand brush, just to give a bit more the idea of different hairs. But it's just adding on the shadow as before, is giving it a bit of a shape to the hair. Oh, it's amazing, the process is always the same, but I feel like my take on the hair is usually so much better than what I do on the skin. There's so much to learn still. So again, the darkest layer, the darkest shadow. I think this is just like an outside layer, which I will then just smudge it in together. I do use the smudge so much. Then starting to add the highlights on the hair and smudging it in and changing the hair color a little bit because I wanted the hair a little bit redder. So I wanted the scarf to have a bit more texture, and luckily Procreate has lots of texture brushes, so I just added that lovely pattern on the scarf. Then I added the shadows, and then I added the highlights. In all honesty, I do work a lot more on the skin and hair than I work on the clothes, so I think that instead of adding 3 layers of shadows, I only used around 2 layers of shadows and 1 of highlights for the clothes. So starting to work on the, on the sleeves. Don't think that's the highest point of my drawing, but kind of works in the end a little bit. Trying to create some sort of silvery look to the bracelets and to the metal look. I also wanted to add some sort of texture to that dress, so I just played a little bit with Procreate brushes and I tried to add a little bit of movement to that grid pattern before I shadowed. I started doing the shadows. For the shadows on the clothes, especially when I add the texture, I use multiply instead of just painting with a darker color. I loved painting that blue scarf in the middle. It's just my favorite part of the whole painting, that and the hair. It just feels and looks amazing. I add the highlights on the clothes the same way that I do on the skin, so I create an add layer and then I just smudge it in and possibly decrease the opacity when it's too much. I just love how the way it looks in the end when you smudge it in together. The add layer is amazing. And by this time it's pretty much the end, and I'm just trying to find something I can add to the picture that I feel it looks right. I couldn't find anything, so I added a bit more highlights and a bit more shadows. Then I added the strand hairs, like the flyaway hairs that I totally forgot to add before, and I remembered luckily before I posted. And again, still trying to find something else to add to the picture, and I ended up settling with the forest brushes. And that's it. I hope you liked it.